weekly world news on Spring Nectar TV, brought to you by Vibha Ramesh, Los Angeles, United States. First, the top headlines. Final verdict on Arbery's murder. Bronx building catches fire. Downing Street party during lockdown. Police blamed. Indian health experts counter ICMR on COVID drug. Western diet linked to autoimmune diseases. Healthcare tax for unvaccinated prompts debate in Quebec. Moving on to news in detail. Almost a year after the fatal incident that killed Ahmaud Arbery, the three men that committed the Heinous Act were sentenced to life imprisonment on Friday. Arbery was a black man living in a predominantly white neighborhood. On that fatal day in February 2020, he was hunted down and shot by Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and William Bryan. The three white men assumed that Arbery could be related to the break-ins in the neighborhood, and they shot him dead. The man was neither armed nor was he party to the break-ins. Before giving the verdict, Judge Timothy Wormsley stated, Ahmaud Arbery was hunted down and shot, and he was killed because individuals here in the courtroom took the law into their own hands. When I thought about this, I thought from a lot of different angles. I kept coming back to the terror that must have been in the mind of the young man running through satire shows. Meanwhile, in one of the most horrific fire disasters in New York, a building in Bronx caught fire on January 9th, triggered by space heaters. Sources say that multiple space heaters were running with some of them on for days. Over 200 firefighters had immediately set into action and sifted through the rubble. The fire took away the lives of 19 people, including 9 children. According to the latest information, more than 60 people were hurt, of which 13 people are in the hospital in critical condition. According to Mayor Eric Adams, the numbers are horrific. This is a horrific, painful moment for the city of New York. The impact of this fire is going to really bring a level of pain and despair in our city. This is going to be one of the worst fires that were witnessed during modern times. In a first-of-its-kind transplantation, a 57-year-old man was transplanted a pig's heart in Maryland. The 7-hour-long surgery, which doctors say were a gamble, involved the successful transplantation of a genetically modified pig into a human. A day before going into surgery, the pig's heart recipient, David Bennett, stated that it was either die or do this transplant. I know it's a shot in the dark, but it's my last choice. It's 4 days after the surgery now, and Bennett is doing well. That said, the long-term implications of the surgery is yet to be known. News also has it that Bennett was a convict from a stabbing incident in 1988. Moving on to India, barely a week after ICMR chief Balram Bhargava voiced his concern about the safety of the antiviral drug Molnupiravir, health experts have released statistics that prove otherwise. According to key health experts and members of the COVID-19 task force, benefits of the drug outweigh the side effects and has helped minimize hospitalization of COVID patients by up to 50%. In the words of Dr. Govindarajan Padmanabhan, a top member of the COVID-19 task force, here is a drug which I'm sure both CDSCO and DCGI have analyzed before approving for use. Any antiviral at this stage is useful, and Molnupiravir should be used taking all precautions as COVID cases are dangerously multiplying. Meanwhile, 2 Indian origin health specialists have put forth a different take on the curbing of the virus. In their opinion, permitting the spread of the Omicron variant is a more effective way to end the pandemic. To that effect, experts Vivek Ramaswamy and Apurva Ramaswamy argued that policies designed to slow the spread of the Omicron may end up creating a super variant that is more infectious, more virulent, and more resistant to vaccines. To minimize the risk, policymakers must tolerate the spread of milder variants. This will require difficult trade-offs, but it will save lives in the long run. Over to the United Kingdom, the Downing Street party that was held during the peak of the pandemic lockdown has hit headlines once again. To this end, top advisor to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, claimed that he had warned about the potential risks and impact of the lockdown breaking party. Subsequently, the investigation into the May 15, 2020 party was expanded to include the one alleged by Cummings. In that context, the police were accused of their prejudice to the powerful and for not investigating the parties in all earnestness. Commenting on the accusation, a senior police officer stated that a booze up in the garden is not in keeping up with the regulations. And on Thursday, Northern Ireland Minister Brandon Lewis said to Sky News that the Prime Minister has outlined that he does not believe that he has done anything outside the rules. If you look at what the investigation finds, people will be able to take their own view of that at that time. Moving on, military officers and senior diplomats from the US and Russia had an intense meeting on Sunday to discuss the situation in Ukraine and Moscow's demands. The meeting was a prelude to the final negotiations that took place. News has it that most of their demands, especially the one that Ukraine should never become a NATO member, were unacceptable by the US. In the words of Sergei Ryabkov, the deputy foreign minister, the conversation was difficult but businesslike. We plunged into the matter of the upcoming affairs. I think that tomorrow we will not waste time. I never lose my optimism. I'm always guided by it. And according to the US Secretary of State, as told to CNN, there are two paths before us. There's a path of dialogue and diplomacy to try to resolve some of these differences and avoid a confrontation. The other path is confrontation and massive consequences for Russia if it renews its aggression on Ukraine. We're about to test the proposition about which path President Putin's prepared to take. And on Monday, negotiations between US and Russian diplomats continued, but failed to make progress in resolving the basic disagreements. Over to Canada, the rise in the number of COVID infections and the battling healthcare system have prompted the province of Quebec to make a rather debatable announcement. With the intent of salvaging the overwhelming hospitals and struggling healthcare system, Quebec announced that unvaccinated residents would be levied healthcare tax. The announcement lost no time in garnering widespread debate as the Premier, François Legault, stated on Tuesday that the unvaccinated would have to pay a health contribution. The date from or the period until when the tax will be imposed have not been released yet. In response to the move, popular news site La Presse brought to the attention the impact the move would have on those with limited resources and access to vaccines. That said, the paper eventually consented to the importance of implementing such a tax for the benefit of the larger population. And here's a sneak peek into the global spread of autoimmune diseases as being linked to Western diet. One of the most widely spreading underlying conditions that compromises the immune system, making it susceptible to contracting any disease, is autoimmune disease. A term that has recently gained immense traction is a condition where the immune system fails to distinguish between healthy cells and disease-causing microorganisms. Research is on at a global level, and two popular experts have established separate research groups to investigate and analyze this dangerous trend. According to Lee, numbers of autoimmune cases began to increase about 40 years ago in the West. However, we're now seeing some emerge in countries that never had such diseases before. He also stated that human genetics has not altered over the past few decades, so something must be changing in the outside world in a way that is increasing our predisposition to autoimmune disease. Supporting his point of view, fellow researcher Vanessa brought forth the link between Western diet and autoimmune disease. She said, fast food diets lack certain important ingredients such as fiber, and evidence suggests this alteration affects a person's microbiome, the collection of microorganisms that we have in our gut and which play a key role in controlling various bodily functions. These changes in our microbiomes are then triggering autoimmune diseases, of which more than 100 types have now been discovered. With that, we come to the last item in this week's news report. Did you know? Did you know that some people fear the rich and of becoming wealthy themselves? Well, it's true, and clearly, these people suffer from what is called plutophobia. People with plutophobia do not trust the rich, and worse still, don't prefer becoming rich or accumulating wealth for themselves. In other words, this irrational fear prevents them from taking up high paying jobs. The causes of plutophobia could range anywhere from genetic predisposition to biological or behavioral cause to traumatic incidents. On that note, I bring you to the end of this week's World Report. I'll see you again next week with more world news on Spring Nectar TV. Stay safe.